Hi, and welcome to another edition of our People First interview series, where we shine a light on great companies that not only do interesting and cool work, but most importantly, look after their people. I'm Pete Sanders. I'm the co-founder and director of Identify Global. We're a market leader in personalized career management and talent acquisition, specializing in the legal technology and legal services marketplace with great candidate experience guaranteed. I'm really excited today to be joined by Benjamin White. He's the founder of Crafty Counsel. Crafty Counsel is a media startup operating in the legal sector. They publish videos, bite-sized tutorials, and other easy-to-digest content on legal operations, innovation, technology, careers, and much, much more. And they run a program of virtual meetups for senior in-house counsel and other legal innovators. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Hi, Pete. I'm really well. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, no, it's really great to have you. So we're going to talk about Crafty Counsel in a bit, but what people really care about is you, and so we want to hear much more about you. But most importantly, you had a baby during lockdown, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so our baby is now coming on for 4 months old. So that was a bit of a different experience.
Yeah, hope mum and baby are both doing well.
Everyone's doing fine. So this is our third. But yeah, different experience during lockdown. I think we were lucky on the timing. Yeah. As everyone knows, we've been through various waves of these restrictions, and we caught it at a point such that it wasn't like the hospital wasn't truly locked down. I could still come to the birth, things like that. So I think that was quite important. Obviously, there are a lot of horror stories out there of people going through labor, mothers going through labor without the dad there, for example. We didn't have that. So yeah, fortunate timing.
Great stuff. I mean, there must be some positives from that. I mean, in terms of being at home more, being around, those first critical, months, you're a busy entrepreneur getting business started. Ordinarily, you'd probably be out of the house. So has there been positives to being locked down with a new baby?
Yeah, there certainly has, with the new baby, and also in the period before that when my wife was pregnant. We've got 2 older kids, so being able to be around and help a bit more and just be with the family, that's been important. So I think that there's definitely aspects of our quality of life which have actually improved during the situation. Obviously, it's a slightly funny feeling because it's a complete tragedy, the catastrophe that we've been all going through. But on a sort of selfish, personal level, some bits of it have been okay. And yeah, you mentioned not having to go into the office, getting time back from commuting, for example. That has been important. And I think, like so many people, therefore thinking, okay, when we go back to whatever normal looks like, how do we capture some of the good stuff and try and get a bit of the best of both?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of prioritization of importance of things in your life going forward, and what great news to hear that there's been lots of new life coming into the world. So I'm really pleased to hear that. I tend to undersell organisations really badly, so apologies if I've messed up any of the things that you do or don't do. But to help us understand Crafty Counsel, because it's quite unique, I think, and I've been consuming a lot of your content as well. So perhaps you can give people a better idea of what you do.
Sure. So thanks, Pete, and I thought the intro was great. So thank you. So we're a media company for legal with a really active community. So what that looks like is on the content side, we're publishing stuff like interviews, panels, tutorials you mentioned, usually but not exclusively through video. And we're trying to do that content piece, I guess, in a use the word unique. So let's go with it, a sort of uniquely authentic, engaging, dare I say it, fun kind of way, which feels a little bit different for legal. So we're trying to make great content which is really relevant to our community. And then there's a community piece. And actually, that's really happened during this pandemic. We found that in that first lockdown period, so many people who were kind of in our audience were coming to us and saying, actually, the reason they liked Crafty Counsel was, yes, learning from the content, but it was as much learning about those people and sort of seeing sort of inspirational stories, maybe seeing some people that they might want to get in touch with and find a way to build their network with those people. It was about that as much as almost like the technical subject matter itself.
Yeah.
And what they were saying to us was, we think Crafty Counsel is a community, but you could do more there. So what we did during 2020 was we preserved that content creation piece, but we started to build a community around it. So we've been getting lawyers, mostly but not exclusively, people working in-house together over Zoom. We have a bunch of different meetup groups that we run, depending on what sort of company you work in or what your interest areas are. We create and circulate notes for the community around that. And we run a digital platform, sort of like a mix between a LinkedIn group and Slack or Teams and WhatsApp for Crafty Counsel as well. So message board plus direct messaging, stuff like that. Yeah. So that mix seems to work really well. And what that means, what we now are, is the media piece, content creators, the community piece, and then we commercialize through content partnerships with people like law firms, legal tech, even recruiters, where we, at the moment, we're mainly making content for those people, which will either co-brand as a sort of sponsored collaboration through the Crafty Counsel platform, or we'll do on a white label basis just for them.
Okay, I mean, it's fantastic, and I think more of that's needed. I mean, where did the idea come from? When was the aha moment, if you like?
Well, so my background is that I was a practicing lawyer. So I worked for Clifford Chance, a big city law firm, for 7 years. Trained and qualified there. I was a corporate lawyer doing corporate law stuff, mergers and acquisitions, working with boards of directors, joint ventures, the usual, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
7 years of that, and then I became an in-house lawyer. So I went to work for a tech company as what was called their group corporate counsel. So lots of, sort of fundraising, M&A, stuff like that. We had a small legal team, and it was during that in-house experience that I came up with the idea of Crafty Counsel. And the background of it was sitting in a relatively small in-house team, feeling a little bit isolated, constantly doing things either sort of on the technical side or maybe on the team side, or what you would now call legal operations side, and thinking, this can't be the first time someone's come across this problem. It'd be really nice to know what sort of good looked like. But it's very hard to get access to that. There are other legal teams like us, but how do we sort of get into their heads, and how do I connect with people who are trying to solve similar puzzles? So that was sort of the original idea. And at the time I was watching a lot of TED Talks and thinking, well, why can't there be something like that for legal? And also I was reflecting back on my experience on the law firm side at Clifford Chance, remembering producing lots of client briefings, for example, and finding, a lot of those were kind of go unread, because I remember one client saying to me, thanks for this note on a technical legal area. I got 10 of those on the same subject this week from other law firms.
Right.
So we're the best one in the world. I was 50-50 on reading the first one, but I certainly didn't read the following 9. And I just thought there's got to be a better way for then people on that side of things, the firms, the tech companies, etc., to be able to present their expertise, their insights, their content updates. So that was the idea around Crafty Counsel at that beginning, trying to pull that all together. And I think that's still very much in our DNA now, some 2.5 years on from me doing this full time.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, how was it done before? I mean, what was it just done, through events and things like that? People presenting at events, is that typically how people consume or get knowledge sharing, isn't it? I mean, was anything like that done before, or?
Yeah, so bits and it's still being done. So there's what we're doing. There are comparisons you make to different points in the market. So the way that we're working with firms or tech companies, people on that side, there's a wall of content now, right? So you go onto LinkedIn and there's so much stuff out there. So many people are publishing their articles, podcasts, even video, etc. And actually, the challenge is actually sorting through that and finding, sort of trusted brands and making sure that you're spending your time consuming the content which is relevant and really engages you. And from a sort of content producer perspective, making sure that you're making something that resonates and you don't spend all that time on it and just falls flat. So there is the sort of the content production machine which exists in legal, and on the community side, there's conferences and events, and those are great. and definitely have their place. And there are membership organizations in legal, and we've got very strong relationships with some of those. I guess we're trying to take the best of lots of different bits of that whole ecosystem and bundle it up into one thing.
Given the lack of opportunity then for people to engage and learn on a personal level, and the community principle then of your product, have you seen an increase in the use of that over the last sort of 12 months? And do you think you're going to continue to see that as people work remotely more often?
So yes, definitely. What's been interesting to see how that manifests. So one thing we started doing after the first lockdown, well, at that point you couldn't film in the studios, so you couldn't get together in person to film a piece of content. And all of our content prior to that had been sort of glossy video content in studio circumstances. So we started doing much more almost sort of guerrilla style content, some recorded through Zoom, quite a lot where we're getting people to film tips on phones. So we've launched a series, for example, of lawyers talking about their favorite shortcuts using Microsoft tools, which sounds kind of obscure.
I saw that. I saw that, and then I've seen the Christmas one where everyone did their little thing via their phones. It was good. Yeah,
and what we found that stuff really resonates. So some of the most popular bits of content we produced have been someone sitting at their desk with a phone talking about how to make a corporate structure chart on PowerPoint, or how to edit a PDF. If someone sends you a PDF, how can you edit it without just writing on it with a pencil? And that stuff seems to really resonate with people. And I think it's quite almost like consistent with the times, that people are looking for a bit of authenticity. There's a certain bar on quality, but people don't need sort of super glossy, and often would prefer something which is authentic to that person rather than very staged.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone much wiser than me said done is better than perfect. So right. By the time, I think sometimes certain things it's best just better done. This is a great idea, let's just do it, as opposed by the time you thought about it, got it all glossy, then the moment's passed. So no, it's been fantastic, and from a non-legal professional such as myself, I've really enjoyed consuming the content. So it's if you can explain it well to someone like me, then you're doing really well. So so you guys have grown quite well over the last 12 months, and obviously there's you're benefiting from, not from the situation, but as a result of the situation. So and you're still hiring, so which is great news. Is there more growth planned for 2021?
Yeah, I think the constant puzzle is where and when to invest. So I think I think many business owners will empathize with this, that we can see the growth in some areas, and it's about how confident do you feel about that? When do you pick your time to really invest behind it? The one thing just today I've been puzzling about is the community side. So we've now got a long waiting list of people who want to join our community meetups. That's great. At some point, we need to think about what additional resource do we bring in to help manage that and make that a really special experience for everyone. So right now, it's mainly about bringing together people over Zoom. What else do we want to do? How do we want to innovate that? What can we do proactively that benefits the community? That's probably an area where we need to invest a bit in. And there's a question of when do we do it? What does that look like, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely anticipating more growth this year.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of last year in that shift of model. So really focusing on the community side, putting in place those sorts of events. And we've now, having done that work, you can see that it's starting to pay off. We're getting more and more interest from different types of partners who want to work with us as well, which is exciting. So yeah, the question is, what's sort of the best use of our resources to make sure we can capitalize on all of this?
Yeah, well, it's a great problem to have to a certain extent, and if you're listening to this, then then we're going to talk a little bit about Ben's leadership style in a moment. But perhaps you give us a quick idea before we go into your leadership style about your your current vision. What's your current vision for the next 12 months? I know you shared some of it just then, but give us an idea of what that looks like.
I think we're just growing on our sort of core areas. It's really three. So
okay.
Our sort of always on content. So Crafty Counsel branded content, like the Microsoft Office series that you saw.
Yeah.
Our community work, and then what we do through Crafty Counsel Studios. And Crafty Counsel Studios is the name of our brand for where we collaborate with partners. So that's making content for people. For them, it's content partnerships with us. Increasingly, it's also things like research, insights, stuff like that. So those are the three verticals, and we really just need to be pushing all of those forward. In the short term, we're currently in the final throes of hiring someone on the marketing side. So to run a particular focus on the social media stuff that we do.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do in our recruitment is to bring people in from outside of legal. I find that actually we get a sort of particular benefit from a wider perspective, and people bring ideas from other sectors. People with legal experience, it's great having that as well. But actually, at the moment, we've found that we've had a particular success doing it that way around.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. It's only on the last recording of the podcast I did, which is not out yet. We talked about, the legal profession or the legal tech market specifically, and actually how it's a bit like banking, is that you get a lot of people that come from that sector. That you have to have experience in that sector to get a job in that sector, and what came first. So and so it's really interesting actually to hear that you're bucking that trend and recruiting. Clearly it has benefits of having people that come from the legal profession. Yourself, you come from the legal profession, so you have that understanding. But absolutely, winding that talent pool gives you broader perspective, different ways of doing things, challenging and saying, well, just because you've done it that way all the way, it doesn't mean you have to do that now. So, fantastic. And that widens your talent pool as well, right? I mean,
It does. And I think just very specifically and pragmatically, if I think about where are the most exciting things happening in media, it's probably not in legal, which is not to knock legal media. There's some great brands and great publications out there, but there's some really exciting stuff happening in other verticals, even B2B ones. So fashion, travel, there's lots of media around entrepreneurship, etc. B2B marketing. In each of those verticals, there's really strong, innovative, and quite new media brands. And so we're looking a lot at those. So the likes of Business of Fashion in the sort of fashion industry sector. Sifted in entrepreneurship, Skift in travel and the business of travel, the Drum in marketing. So those are all really interesting titles, and there's a lot that we can learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a growing business who are looking to recruit, can you give listeners an idea of your leadership style and what leadership means to you?
Yeah, interesting. I've been thinking a lot about that over the holidays, Pete. So I guess what I try to be is someone who I'm trying to be a leader who empowers others to do their best work. The problem is it's very easy to say that, but then as ever in life, it's a lot easier to say things than it is to do them.
Yeah.
And one thing I've been thinking a bit over Christmas is how to move away from being in the weeds on lots of things, and how do you best really, really empower people. So I've actually just been reading a business book, which is pretty popular at the moment, I suspect, in a lot of entrepreneurs' Christmas stockings, which was No Rules Rules. It's by Reed Hastings, co-founder and CEO of Netflix, and Erin Mayer, who's an academic at INSEAD Business School. And that's really taking a deep dive on the Netflix business culture. And Netflix is known to have a sort of very particular culture, a lot of which, frankly, I don't think would work for me and our company. But there's a lot in there which would, and I found really resonated. And in particular, I've just been reading a chapter talking about the usual sort of command and control approach that you have in organically developed most organizations, that basically any individual right on the front line, there's a certain level of decision which has to be elevated, that you can't take. And then it gets elevated and elevated and elevated as you go through the hierarchy, depending on how important that is.
Okay.
The problem you get is that then actually, by the time you're up at the very top of the CEO, that person may not have the right context and information. They may not be the right person to actually make the decision. And also that's a slow and cumbersome process. So they talk about how do you flip that, and how do you give enough context to people to be able to empower them to make those decisions. So again, it's a lot easier to say it than to actually do it. But it gave me a lot of food for thought around the importance of hiring the right people. And so people who are able to sort of thrive in that sort of environment where they can take decisions themselves, but also having sufficient context around what the business is up to and alignment on the strategy. So I guess those are that's been kind of my homework recently. So how do I help set a clear vision, and how do I give everyone enough context while not overburdening them with massive reams of detail that they don't need to know to do their jobs. So I guess you asked for what's my leadership style. So I'm trying to figure it out, I guess, and I think it's important to always be learning, and that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think that's fantastic, and it being open and honest like that. I think that's, it is easy to sit there and say, I do this and do that because it sounds good, and to a certain extent you might even believe it, and it's not. It doesn't make it false. It just means that aspirationally, and everyone wants an aspirational perfection, don't they? So, but I totally get where you're coming from, and like a lot of business owners, we look for inspiration because when you're at the top of an organization, you need to look for your own inspiration, right? Everyone looks up in the world, don't they? So and depending on your beliefs, there's only so far you can look. So but I took inspiration from a book by Daniel Pink, and he looks at things like autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And and I think for leaders is when you've got to find a leadership style that suits you, and not out of a book. The book gives you the inspiration to say, do you know what, that is me. That is how I resonate with that. Because if not every leadership style works in every type of organization, and you have to say, well, I can't really do that in my organization, or I don't think that would resonate with me. So everyone's figuring it out, and you're in a really great position where you can adopt a culture and a leadership style. Many people can't do that. They have to take the reins of an organization, and it's like steering a ship. So I think that's fantastic that you're open and honest, and I think that probably stands out as one of your leadership styles, if nothing else. So so more importantly then, what does it mean to work for Crafty Counsel? What's the purpose? What is it you do for your customers?
Well, I guess what we're trying to do is to build a big and authentic, to use that word again, a big and authentic media brand within legal. So that's what we're working on. I think there's an opportunity there and a gap. And so within that, there's, depending on what you're doing, whether you're a content creator or whether you're working on the sales side or the marketing side, I think there's a meaty enough mission there and bags of responsibility that I think you can grow individually a great deal while achieving that mission. So that's the plan. Sort of I think an ambitious mission for our space. Yeah. Providing people with that authenticity, community, network, which maybe has been a little bit difficult to come by. And then making sure that we're giving each of the team members something which motivates them to get up in the morning. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, what a great place to be in trying to deliver those things. So if we then move this on a little bit then to the people that work for you at the moment, what have you, well, where are we now? Lockdown 3. So who knows what version of the lockdown will be in next, but what have you done for your employees during this time, during lockdowns, and how have you communicated with your people? Yeah, I mean, I do worry about it. What we've done is, well, we rolled out Slack, so we weren't using Slack internally, and in fact, it took us a few months during of lockdown to actually get there. So we were still sending emails internally, and then finally, I think one day I just said, sorry, executive decision. We're moving on Slack today. And it was actually when we had a new team member join, and I could see within a couple of days, just one more kind of node on the network meant everyone extra emails back and forth. So Slack, I think Slack's helped. It's a tool, but it's a helpful one. We meet virtually once a month for a sort of virtual team lunch.
Yeah,
and that's important. Try and have a sort of little bit of, I guess, banter and fun virtually to the extent we can, over Slack, etc.
Yeah.
Weekly team meeting, which is as much a sort of check-in for how's everyone doing as anything else. So a few small things like that. I don't think any of those are massive surprises.
No.
On a sort of tangible level, again, it took me a little while, but what we've done is we've offered to everyone an allowance to spend on work from home kit.
Okay.
And we said, look, you choose. So we don't. It's not company equipment. We don't need to have a discussion around what you're going to buy. Just send us your receipt for £500, and if it's a chair, if it's a light, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So just hoping to just help people to make the best of the situation they can in working from home.
Wow.
On the whole, working from home, I think we've adjusted quite well to it. But even if you like it in spirit, there's still a lot of micro adjustments that you need to make. So that's some of the sort of stuff. But I think there's still big questions around how do you know how everyone is doing, right? Yeah. So you don't want to call everyone like each day to just like make sure that just to say, are you doing okay?
Yeah.
But equally, you don't want to let too much time go by before you can turn around and you realize, oh, you've gone through a week and you haven't spoken to one of your team members. You've sent some chat messages. So it's hard.
Have you had to adapt the way that you manage or lead then remotely? Is that something you've had to change? I mean, has that been a new learning for you, or has it been pretty much the same?
I don't think I have so much yet. The way we were working before was we had an office, but I was often out seeing people. So as is often the way of sort of company founders. Yeah. So there were definitely days when I wasn't in. I'd sort of be in for an hour in the morning, say hi to everyone, and then shoot off. And we were pretty flexible regardless. So we had one member of the team who always worked from home on Fridays anyway. Yeah. So we were flexible-ish already. Not small enough team that there wasn't a policy or anything, but the understanding has always been just get the work done sort of thing. Yeah. So consciously probably haven't adapted that much. I think one of the questions for this year, as this continues to go on, is what is worth doing, particularly as the team grows, right? We've hired one person during lockdown already. We've got one team member who I've never met in person, hasn't met any others in person. We'll shortly have another one where that's the case. So what do we do about that?
Yeah, that's we haven't done that, and I'm not sure how I would because that's a completely new thing. It's business owners hire people and don't always have to get to meet them, but in a small business you do, right? It's in fact you meet them. In fact, you do all of it because it's your business, and you start to create that culture. So, I mean, have you learned anything about yourself and the business over the last 12 months? Have you learned that good or bad things that you're capable of doing or not capable of doing, or probably not best placed doing?
Yes, definitely. I don't know if it's strictly due to what we're going through, the pandemic and COVID, etc. But 100%. I mean, someone said to me quite early on with Crafty Counsel, "What's been your biggest mistake?" And I said, "I don't know yet, but I know that I've made a bunch of them." So I feel like that all the time. This constant sense of, what did I do in the last few days that in a few months I'm going to say, oh, that wasn't what to do. Some of the specifics, I think I have a general tendency probably to spread myself a bit too thinly.
Yeah.
So trying to make sure that I'm focusing on big ticket things, trying to be a little more rigorous around, yes, picking those things and then monitoring, did we do that? Either through a KPI or some loose target or something like that. I've just been going through the process this week of communicating our sort of quarterly and yearly targets. That's been a healthy exercise, and I think we haven't been around for that long, but definitely I think that's been done in the sort of the clearest way so far in the life of the company. And I think with that tendency to spread too thinly, I think I also sometimes fall in love with new projects, new ideas, new people that we want to collaborate with.
Yeah.
And actually, the important thing is often what you say no to as much as what you end up doing. Particularly as things have been picking up with us, because as we do interesting things, then more and more people want to do stuff with us.
Yeah.
So it's now moving more to, okay, well, what are the most valuable opportunities?
Yeah, no, I get that. We've been there ourselves. When we started up, it started out, we're being hyper focused on what we're doing, and then you get customers saying, well, you do that so well for us, then can you do this? And that was cool, but we want to do a little bit of this, and you have to adapt and change. And I think it's one thing that I've noticed over the last 12 months, I mean a bit longer than that, to be perfectly honest, and it's not because of COVID. I think organizations want more agile businesses to work with. They want agile partners, and if you can't adapt and change to that, then you're going to, someone else will come in and do that for you. And I think that's where some of the large organizations have struggled. They've got so used to holding all of the cards, and as a small organization, you'd be more agile, more cost effective, have more of a relationship. And I think people want that probably more so now, over the last 12 months. People want, more valuable relationships, and, they want that engagement from someone. So, hopefully that's more power to you in that sense. So, okay, I mean, on that note, what piece of advice would you give people navigating this period, your peers, the business owners? What piece of advice could you share, a bit of wisdom?
As much of a cliche as it might be at the moment, I think cutting yourself a little bit of slack. So I find, like many people, every week I start with my list of stuff for the week, and every day there's a list of stuff for the day, and you always end up at the end of the week with way more on it. And nevertheless, actually, you are achieving a lot. And I think especially in current circumstances with these rolling lockdowns, I think just being able to say that not every day has to be completely perfect. You don't have to fully get through that list, and making sure that you're building a bit of time for yourself as well, which is really hard. Particularly when you're going through stuff like people having kids at home and so on. I think can be very hard to do that. So the usual stuff, having time to have a walk or have a bit of time with your partner in the evening or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you said earlier, it's easier said than done, isn't it? Right. So everyone wants to give themselves a bit of slack, but pressures mount. But I think it's so important, and the Christmas break, definitely taught that for me. I've worked the whole time through lockdown trying to keep the business going, and to have that 2 weeks off over Christmas and just switch off from work was it was amazing. So 3 quick fire questions then, just to finish off. So the 3 trends that are on your website. So innovation trends for 2021.
Personal development. I think picking up what I was saying before. I think there's going to be a continued focus on trying to just cut each other some slack. So a continuing of the trend that we've seen with stuff like mindfulness, people taking more time out for themselves, trying to think of the position of others, empathy. I think it's been a key word of last year, where people were struggling with the situation of my team's fully remote. How do I know what everyone's going through? So I think that's going to be a continued trend.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And legal trends?
I think a continuing steady increase in the power of in-house teams. Don't think law firms are going away. I think big law is safe for a very long time, but I think we've already been seeing more and more people are moving in-house. In-house teams are getting more sophisticated in the tools at their disposal. They're getting more sophisticated in their demands of their partners, be that law firms, tech, etc. They're getting better at being able to report on the impact of some of the stuff that they're doing on, say, technology or operations. So I think gradually becoming more demanding and sophisticated clients, and with that, choosing a sort of richer blend of partners to work with across law firms, new law, tech, etc.
Great. And innovation trends 2021?
So I think the trend for me here is around in-house teams retooling tech that they already have to meet their needs. Right. So take an example. It might be, as I was talking with someone just this week, seeing if you can use Salesforce to build some sort of contract approval workflow rather than something specifically built for legal. And that was from a GC who said, look, we use Salesforce throughout the company. If I can go to my CEO and say, I've built the approvals workflow within that, and everyone's already adopted that tool, and it doesn't require any new spend, I'm going to get huge brownie points. So I think I keep hearing versions of that story over and over again. And with that is also the platform story that while on the one hand, we have some really interesting, innovative point solutions within legal tech, you also have, number one, consolidation in the market of big legal tech players, Litera, for example, gobbling up some of the small and medium-sized players. And also then, quote unquote, non-legal technology companies like Microsoft, Google, Adobe, who have the platform, they've got the suite of products. And if you are in a legal team, legal ops or general counsel, and your company is using Microsoft 365, then there's tools there which might be good enough to meet your needs. It might be a 7 out of 10 rather than 10 out of 10 from a built for purpose legal tech solution. And you're probably going to use that tool.
Yeah.
And your IT department are probably going to ask you why do you need this new thing? Have you looked in Microsoft 365? Have you seen what we've already got? So I think that's been a trend already. I think that's going to continue this year. It poses, I guess, an interesting strategic question for legal tech companies as to what they do with that. I don't think it's necessarily all bad. I think some of that sort of retooling and sort of guerrilla improvisation with existing tech can actually be a pathway towards something a bit more ambitious and sophisticated.
Yeah.
Retooling a spreadsheet, Google Sheets, for example, turning that into contract management or matter management, not quite system, but something to track what you're doing. That's a jumping off point to then be able to say to your CFO, look at the stuff that we're capturing in a fairly ad hoc way. What if we had something more sophisticated now and could capture some data in there as well?
Yeah.
So I think if I was in a legal tech company, I would be looking at that challenge from the existing more generic solutions and asking myself, how does our product, what's the value add on top of that?
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. Thank you very much for that. Well, that brings us to the end. So I'm delighted to highlight Crafty Counsel for everybody that's listening. So if you're interested in a really cool, interesting media startup in the legal sector, then go and check out their website and register your interest with Ben. And you can see the list of his opportunities that are coming up through his business. Ben has just released a new job page for the legal profession, and he is offering free job posts for qualifying organizations. So you can go and check out the Crafty Counsel website and register your new vacancy through there, and hopefully attract some new talent to your business as well. Ben, it's been a delight talking to you. Thank you very much.
Pete, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.